Please welcome back to the stage, Joseph Durko.
Thank you. It's time for today's final session, monetizing your craft. More often than not, anytime I meet a developer, the first question they ask when I tell them about Lens Studio is, how do I make money? Well, I hear that. They were like, yes. Well, you're going to hear from Snap employees who work on various aspects of our ecosystem and our platforms, and they're going to show you how to make money within our ecosystem. Please help me welcome on stage moderator Lee Brown and panelist Joe Habibi Hakeem, Jesse McCullough, Micah Jackson, and Alexander Kutsalos.
Hello, LensFest. I'm Lee Brown from Snap's developer marketing team, and I will be your host for this session. Everyone here up on stage and in this room has been in AR for a while. We are the lifers, the people who have been in it from the beginning. We've been on this roller coaster together. An example from me, I was just thinking 8 years ago, I tried to convince a sales team that at a previous company that we needed web AR at this trade show. And this is like pre-scanning QR codes, pre-pandemic. And I just remember the shock and awe of people on the trade show floor just being like, wow, you just brought this booth to life. And that was when I really started, that was actually where AR started for me before Snap. And this whole panel has been in the AR industry for a decade. We've brought them together to talk about monetization. And over my years at Snap, I've spent a lot of time thinking about the different ways that Lens Studio developers can succeed. And truly, from all the Lens Fests I've helped put on, we've always talked about how to monetize your craft. But just 3 years ago, this conversation went a little different, because the one clear way back then was to make money with a brand. Just book business with a brand. It's so easy, right? And back then, getting a project for a brand was only for Snapchat lenses. You couldn't create for Camera Kit or for spectacles and make money. So what we're excited to discuss today is how you can do that now. And our 4 amazing panelists have navigated the AR industry for decades. They've all thought about monetization a lot and are ready to share their thoughts and their experiences with you. They are a team of experts. They're developers and creatives just like you, or at least like Joe. He can generate a lens with the most unique prompts. So like I said, we've got Joe Hakeem, literally on the monetization team and product marketing. We've got Alex from creative strategy, Jesse Spectacles, and we've got Micah from Camera Kit. So before we get started with our conversation, let's get to know them a bit more with a fun question. When did you realize you were first passionate about AR?
I'll jump in. When I first got my first headset, I had this really magical moment where I realized that my brain thought that the AR object in front of me was real. So I was able to download this application that had this like toy model helicopter, connect a Bluetooth keyboard up to your device. You could fly this thing around. And I remember working in this office building with cubicles, and I'm flying this helicopter around, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure that I do not crash my helicopter into the actual cubicle walls for fear of breaking it. And that's when I had kind of that moment of like, oh, my brain thinks this is real. There's something behind this. This is my time to dive in. And it's been gangbusters ever since for me.
Awesome. I kind of similarly, many years ago before joining Snap, I worked for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and back then they were working on some very early XR experiments, and one of them was Curiosity, which was the rover on Mars at the time, still is on Mars. They basically sent back data and stitched together sort of like a 3D representation of the Mars landscape, and this was done in the conference room on the other side of our office. And it was one of those moments where I put on the headset, and you could see, and it wasn't like really high fidelity polished graphics, but still being able to see the surface of Mars, and then you had the mission scientists like telling you where to look and what pointing out, like key elements in the landscape. And it was just one of those, I mean, honestly, life-changing moments. Honestly, I probably would not be sitting here if that not had happened. And it just showed the power of like augmenting a space,
Yeah, it's funny to hear Jesse and Micah both talk about headset experiences. Mine is also a headset-based kind of come to Jesus moment with AR. My background's in filmmaking. I was a really ambitious young film student, and that didn't really jive with the Hollywood industry that kind of typically has a ladder that you need to climb up in order to get through and tell stories at a big scale. And this was around the time that VR was kind of coming back again, and I tried a VR headset. And I said, oh, this can be a great way for me to actually pioneer a new type of storytelling. So I focused basically the rest of my college career on VR storytelling, realized that was too dystopian for me. I didn't want to disconnect people from reality. And this is, I think, the first time around 2016 when Snap actually released the video of a floating rainbow in a public park. And I said, okay, that's the type of storytelling I want to do, and I want to go work at Snapchat. So this has kind of brought me to today.
Yeah, my background is in finance, so much less creative than you all. Actually, being creative in finance actually gets you put in jail most of the time. I think for me, it was more along the lines of seeing all the excitement that Snapchatters have day in and day out using lenses, and all the value it creates to our platform, and obviously off-platform as well, and your favorite stadium, and thinking about like ways that we can start to capture that value and share it back with developers so that they're continuing to inspire themselves and others on building new and exciting experiences.
Love it. Talking about all of the positive things, and we're also very realistic, what are some of the pain points that developers are facing today?
I mean, on the headset side, like, the elephant in the room is, I started in this 2015, 2016. I was absolutely confident that the device I was using then would be on everybody's head in the next year and a half. We're now 10 years later. I think the majority of the headsets in the world are in this room right now. So, that distribution is not there yet. We've obviously announced the specs coming next year at the consumer level. That's going to kind of broaden that horizon, broaden that opportunity size. But that's really the crux of it. Like, you can go build amazing experiences, but the people who are using them right now are your developer friends and the community that's here, which is great to get kind of that uplift and everything, and this is where it starts. But that distribution and opportunity size is definitely kind of the big pain point that we have right now.
Yeah, kind of picking up on that, like for Camera Kit, I know like Bobby shared a lot of the cool announcements this morning, but I'm just kind of curious, just a quick show of hands, how many of you have used or are familiar with Camera Kit? All right, so, oh, wow, all right, great. So for those who do not know, so Camera Kit is basically our SDK, which allows you to take lenses that you build in Lens Studio and distribute them, whether it's a mobile app or a website. And then two, some of you may have already used Camera Kit and not realized it. When you publish basically a web-hosted lens, that is also using Camera Kit. And so to answer the question in terms of opportunity, like I know one of the pain points, again, like with distribution has been a challenge, but Camera Kit basically allows you to take those lenses and place them in the real world. So there are so many different potential applications, and I often think of the total addressable market, the TAM, if you will, as being almost anything in the world, whether it's a local coffee shop or a school or a museum or a gym. Like there's so many places where lenses could live and basically enhance that space, make it more engaging, and then also basically, if you're thinking about like a small coffee chain or somewhere where they want to enact loyalty for their customers and tell the brand story, a QR code in a space with a web-activated lens via Camera Kit can do the trick, and it doesn't even need to be that complicated, and I think it basically opens up just a huge opportunity. Like 90% of the businesses in most cities and communities are supported by small to medium-sized businesses, right? And so it allows those businesses to have experiences that in the past they probably wouldn't even be able to afford or even dream or think about, right? And so this is where your unique skill sets in Lens Studio could be easily monetized. You know, I think there's tons and tons of opportunity there. And I know too, like in terms of working with some of our biggest brands and being able to have like lenses live in places like Cannes, and you know, Alex has worked on some incredible campaigns.
I don't necessarily have the opportunity size issue because I get to work with Snapchat, which is hundreds of millions of people engaging with AR on a daily basis. But I definitely think, you know, in the past decade, the process of pitching AR has entirely changed, right? We had an initial novelty and excitement phase around this is something completely new and innovative, and honestly, selling AR in the beginning was probably kind of easy. Because it was flashy and something special. And that kind of happened, I would say, again, kind of in the COVID era. Once people couldn't go out and experience the world, we wanted to use AR and virtual tech to kind of address that issue. And now when I think about pitching AR, it's less about the novelty and the specialty of the technology, but more about the connections that it's making. And so when we think about, you know, the pain points, it's honestly simplifying the concept to what Micah was saying, down to something you want to share with someone else, right? Sends and posts is really the metric that we want to think about on Snapchat because we are a communications platform, right? We want to build AR that is shared amongst our community. And so it's a matter of kind of like stripping down, I would say, a lot of the AR complexity into something that feels as easy to share as possible, which, you know, Joe is very familiar with, obviously, through Snap.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Like the way we've kind of designed Lens Creator Awards, and you know, most recently with Lens Plus, is like really kind of touching on exactly the same way. You know, when I think about what a successful lens looks like to a brand, you know, like high reach, high engagement, really getting kind of Snapchatters and users engaged. That's kind of like how we've taken and you know, thought about Lens Creator Awards from the ground up. And you know, it's really something we've kind of designed here, but your client isn't, you know, your favorite soda brand or whoever it may be. It's, you know, everyday Snapchatters. And so when I think about like the history of lenses, and you can see it in the courtyard, they've really evolved from, you know, simple filters to like games and Bitmoji experiences and so much more. And we're continuing to see that evolution. And you know, it's growing. Like 8 billion people on Snapchat are using lenses every day. And I think that's part of what makes the history of lenses so exciting to celebrate. And I think what's like most interesting to me is not only to see that value captured on Snapchat, but also obviously extend off platform. I mean, Micah, you were asking the audience earlier, like who's used Camera Kit. Yeah. If any of you stop by the arcade outside, like that's all powered by Camera Kit, right? And so, you know, I would argue that almost everyone here has used Camera Kit already. And the experience in the courtyard, again, is the same way. And these are the same lenses that exist on Snapchat that, you know, millions of Snapchatters use every single day. And when you kind of take them out of the app and you put them into kind of a standalone experience, the experience is transformed in a way that you weren't kind of using that lens in the same way. And so, you know, I think about some of the experiences we built in, you know, different stadiums around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. You're referring to, so we have a product called Snapchat Cam, which launched here at SoFi Stadium. So if you go to a football game, like you may have seen lenses applied during certain segments. And, you know, again, to Joe's point, it's one of those things where, you know, even on our side internally, we were think about ways of which, like, okay, how do we get lenses out, you know, in the world? And also, too, more importantly, in spaces where, you know, people may not expect it, right? They're not necessarily expecting an AR experience. And I think for you all, like, it's one of the most encouraging things, right? I would encourage you when you're going into any kind of commonly used space, there's usually some opportunity. One of the things I kind of jokingly do, and I'm sure we kind of all do this as well as sort of AR lens-minded folks, is like, I'm almost like, when I see like a diagram or infographic, like a flat, you know, literal 2D, I'm like, this is an opportunity for a lens, right? This could totally be a lens. It doesn't even need to be that complicated, you know, to make that experience sort of speak to me and make the space speak to me. And one of the cool things, you know, touching on kind of the point that Alex raised, is like the beauty of building these lenses, distributing them outside of Snapchat, is that also, too, if it's a local coffee brand or like a local gym, that same lens can live on Snapchat and also generate, interest and basically draw that user base to these businesses as well. So I think there's a really good symbiotic opportunity there. And I think in terms of monetizing, one of the big announcements we've had, which Lee kind of alluded to, is basically not having to attribute Snapchat on lenses and uses for camera kit. And I think, again, hopefully it will make for more custom experiences.
Yeah, and I've already heard from a few developers say that attribution was like a huge blocker to selling AR across these different surfaces. And so I think for me, like the way to get around some of these opportunity pain point issues is more around strategizing how to put AR in different places and use the assets that you've built, which are incredibly complex and rich, and deploy them in different locations, right? So that coffee shop might have a logo, that logo can be something shareable on Snapchat, but something functional for Camera Kit for web, and then eventually, something, wayfinding or utility focused for specs, right?
Totally, yeah. Alex, you and I talk a lot about just like the full holistic picture of AR, right, on and off platform. I know you've done that with brands in really exciting ways. And I know that the Camera Kit announcements today and just Camera Kit being more open than ever has been so exciting. I remember when I started at Snap, I was interviewing devs and FaceMe was like, please give me mirrors. Please open up Camera Kit, let me do mirrors. And in the keynote today, it was like, I don't know how many mirror lenses, but incredible to see. So it's really exciting. We've come a long way. I want to ask the panel, how has AI changed this space?
You want to take it?
Yeah, I mean, it's so many different ways. On the headset side, first for developers, like being able to go in and get help. And I know there was a session earlier today where they talked about AI tools. I think they were talking about some of the MCP server stuff that we're working on in Lens Studio. So making it more friendly for your, external cursor or your build tools to understand how Lens Studio works and help you in your flow. But also some of the great things you can do within a lens. On spectacles, we've got the step caching API where you can take a frame from the camera, send it out to an AI, have it understand the scene, be able to put content in the scene at the right depth, so you're labeling things where they are, and that just becomes a really incredibly powerful tool for bringing AI into your everyday life.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the democratization of tools is generally like very exciting and also very scary. And the exciting side is like a year ago, I wouldn't have been able to build a lens that was launched to promote a movie, but that did happen last week, which is great of me not being a lens developer to do that. At the same time, I'm not trying to like take away roles or positions from the experts in the room that I constantly collaborate with and I enjoy collaborating with, right? And so I think it's about a matter of finding the opportunities to use AI correctly, and then the opportunities when like we need the experts to actually be building something that's way more complex than
it kind of raises the bar.
Yeah,
right?
we don't want all lenses to end up looking the same.
Yeah.
So I think individuality and sort of your personal touch actually helps stand out, right?
Totally.
Yeah, I think like plus one to everything you've said. I'm not a very skilled person. I'm very creative mentally, but when it comes to actual practical applications, I fall short. But AI has really enabled me to kind of take the creativity that I have in my head and be able to create something where I never would have. And I think like the part about that I get to celebrate most is that it just means more people are able to build lenses. And I think that's something like we should all be super excited about. The other thing that I think about is like how it can turn people who have building lenses for many years now, like, and superpower kind of the skill set that they have. And we just wrapped up a hackathon, and I would probably argue that like AI was involved in some way, shape, or form, and just helping people meet that like 25-hour deadline. And so it's really, really exciting to see like what's possible. And I think the other piece is like, okay, well, I had something that I had been doing for a long time that was just kind of a pain in the butt to do. How can I just help automate that or make it a little bit easier to do, whether it's like some sort of agentic work or with Lens Studio AI or blocks or whatever it is that you choose to just make your life easier. And so then you can really focus on, I think, the best part, which is being creative.
Yeah, kind of going back to Jesse and specs and even the experience I shared, my first experience with like XR and the fact that mission scientists were talking in your ear. I think, now is a really exciting time in my opinion, because we obviously know like AR is going to be the way in which humans, I think, we visually understand the world around us. And I think AI will play a huge role, in terms of being kind of those agents in that you're interacting with and trying to understand like, oh, well, where's the nearest restroom or where's this? But I think AR is going to be the way in which we commonly understand, right? It's going to be the visual language. And I'm mature enough in this industry to recall a time where, I graduated during the .com era, right? And I literally remember having to explain to people, one day you'll need a website. And I was like, oh, no, why would I need a website? And I think in a weird way, like we're kind of at this really exciting time where a lot of the conventions for, again, using camera kit and specs, like how do you make a space relevant, right? How do you make a space talk to someone? How do you guide someone through a space? What are those sort of conventions that you guys are all shaping right now? And so I think, again, it's a really exciting time and way in which you can work on projects that, even if they're served through a lens and camera kit, used in specs, or ultimately future iterations of specs where it's become just kind of second nature. But the exciting thing is you have the opportunity to work on these things now.
I think the other thing I'll mention about to be a little bit more process oriented with AI that's been helpful is, like Joe was saying, I'm not an expert at drawing or concept art, but I can very quickly now use AI to storyboard something. And I think for actual pure business practice, that gets us closer to selling through an AR concept and AR lens quicker, and also do it in a way where timelines can be shorter and you can deliver results faster for the client, right? Which hopefully allows for repeat business and creates a good flow and a steady source of income. So as a tool, yeah,
is like a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
It's sometimes hard to communicate with words of what you can do with AR.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of exciting times, I know there were a lot of announcements in this morning's keynote. So I'm punting it over to you all to kind of explain more about those announcements.
Yeah, it's a really, really exciting time to be monetizing with AR. Lens Creator Awards now has been out for a little over 2 years. Really great to see kind of how that has evolved. I think for us, it's really thinking about what this next step really meant. And so what we did with Lens Plus payouts is we're collecting feedback over those 2 years and really understanding what developers wanted out of monetizing on Snapchat. And so for us, it was all about how can we enable people to build a portfolio of lenses that continues to stay monetized over a longer period of time, not just a one-time payout or a one-time reward. And so I think what's so special about that is it really enables people to build lenses that continue to stay relevant, and then also affords them the opportunity to kind of go back to that lens and update it. I mean, all of you all know that Lens Studio has come a very long way in the past year and a half. Obviously, a very long time beyond that as well. And we keep adding so many more features, and oftentimes I find myself going back to a lens I used 6 months ago and said oh man, this would have been great with leaderboards, or I wish this person had a Bitmoji version of this. And so for us, it's about how can we kind of allow people to take lenses that they've really spent the time to build out and continue to update them, upgrade them, and maybe have a version 2, but also continue to keep them monetized in a way that incentivizes them to have a portfolio of lenses that, again, continue to stay relevant, continue to drive subscriptions, and allow them to ultimately benefit from that directly in a way that was never possible before. So super excited about that. And I think where we are today on Snapchat, at least, is whether your lens goes viral or whether it continues to drive subscribers and continues to stay relevant, or you even win a challenge with challenge tags, you have multiple avenues to kind of monetize depending on your appetite and your kind of creation at the time. So yeah, super excited.
I think on the spectacle side, this morning we obviously announced Commerce Kit, so that's going to allow you to do in-app purchases. Again, coming back to kind of those pain points of distribution opportunity size, I wouldn't plan on making $1 million next week on Commerce Kit. Maybe in a couple weeks, next month, we'll see. we're being hopeful. But I think the second opportunity I want to talk about is, last year at LensFest, we got up on stage and announced our lens fund for spectacles. And one thing we learned is that all of you have 1.5 million ideas and you send all of them to us. And we didn't really have the structure in place to go and properly go through all those, vet all those, figure out which ones were, worth investing in and not worth investing in, but like just able to, see where this is going. And so what we're kind of doing is pulling that back a little bit. And we started doing, following in the Snapchat, steps of doing challenges. We've started doing these monthly lens challenges for spectacles. And so every month we're giving away $33,000 in prizes for either new lenses, updated lenses, or if you're doing stuff with kind of the experimental stuff that you can't publish, when you open source those. And what we're doing is taking those projects, looking at them as kind of the proof of concept, and the ones that we think have legs for going further on the platform, we'll reach out to the developers, work on funding them, and the eventual goal is, you build stuff with us, we build a relationship with you, because it's all about relationships, in this business. And then as we start going out into the world with a new version, and we've got brands coming on board that, clearly their dev teams are great at building web experiences and stuff, but, spectacles and AR is a whole new world for them, and they're looking for developer teams. It's an opportunity for us to go build that relationship and introduce them to the developers who have been building with us. And so that's kind of the funnel that we're trying to build. And so I want to encourage people who are out there building, participate in the lens challenges, get some money that way, start building a relationship with us, and let's take it, all the way.
Cool. I'll just kind of piggyback on some of the things I touched on earlier with Camera Kit and distributing lenses off platform. I think one of the one of the most common uses of Camera Kit that we've seen really evolve over the last few years is the use of AR mirrors, which you've seen some of our best here and had a chance to experience some of our first party mirrors. And I say one of the things that before we had a lot of sort of restrictions and things around like branding attribution and use cases, but we've definitely, we're really thoughtful in your needs and the fact that obviously a lot of brands that you work with, a lot of places in which you would have these mirror experiences obviously want something very custom. They want it to really speak to their brand, and we wanted to remove that friction, and so we're really proud to be able to announce that you now have the ability, the flexibility to create AR mirrors, and again, using QR codes as well as 2D image markers. I'm a big fan of like 2D image markers, which is not new tech, right? It's been around for a few years in lenses, but again, it serves a great purpose of just basically introducing your audience, your visitors to a space, to AR in a very practical way. And so again, I would encourage you all to honestly think locally, start in your communities, go to places that are heavily trafficked, think about, talk to the managers and the business owners, the operators about what are the things that they want people to do while dwelling in those spaces, right? I guarantee you'll probably find several use cases that they hadn't even thought about. And the funny thing is like, they're probably very simple lenses to build, right? It's just a matter of getting that lens distributed and then being able to access it very easily. So again, we'd encourage you to use Camera Kit. Again, being able to monetize your unique skill set is valuable now, and it will be, and two, it just sets you up for a future where wearables and specs are gonna be the norm. So hopefully it's encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, when Micah talks about like places, one space that I spend a lot of time is a movie theater, right? And this is an industry that is having trouble getting people to a movie theater, and there are local chains, there are bigger chains. But within a movie theater context, you could think of a mirror working really well. You could think of QR codes on popcorn buckets and movie posters and standees. And you could think of something on Snapchat to promote coming to the movie theater itself, right? So there is that like holistic overview that Lee was talking about that I think allows hopefully all of you to monetize more because you're now building 3 different lens executions instead of just one, but they're all actually tackling different business use cases, right?
Yeah, exactly. We are going to start to wrap up, but before we do that, I want to ask, looking ahead to next year, LensFest 2026, what do each of you hope to say is true?
I would love to celebrate the first Lens millionaire. That's my goal. Maybe it's next week. I don't know, Justin. We'll see. But that's my 2026 goal.
I think for me, I would love to have one of you come up and say, I built this experience on the current generation of specs. We've launched the next generation, and my app had 100,000 users or some big number like that. That would just totally thrill me, because I know that there's developers out there already who are sending me messages of like, my app's been used in all these different countries, and they're kind of mind blown. Yeah, Yoast is right there. And I would just love for that to be at scale of a bunch of you coming and saying, I can't believe how much my lens is being used.
I think for me, it would be going somewhere just out in the public, out in the wild, and scan a QR code and see a lens, basically. And it's like, oh, it's a camera kit lens. It's using camera kit. And like, again, like I shared earlier, there's so many of those cases where I'll be somewhere like at a park or something, and there's like literally a 2D map and there's a PDF, and I'm like, oh man, like this could be so much easier, useful if it were just rotated. I could, use it as an AR map essentially. And so I guess my hope is to see more of these activations in the real world. So.
Yeah, and I think to my last point, I would really love to see somebody successfully deploy a lens that kind of hits those 3 touch points, right? Snapchat audience for like mass awareness, something local with a QR code, and then ideally an activation or something more innovative focused with spectacles. I think something that hits all of those from a particular brand use case would be awesome.
Absolutely. I feel inspired. I hope you all feel inspired. I feel like, Micah, you could have a This Should Be a Lens podcast. And we'll get that started after this. But no, you'll get links to all the programs that we mentioned right behind us, I think. Yeah, there's a QR code. And we're all here at LensFest all day, so the conversation doesn't end here. Please come find us and talk to us. We love to hear your success stories, your pain points. We're really here for you. And whether we are developers ourselves, we really just try to get as close as possible to being in your shoes. So thank you to our awesome panelists, and thank you for joining us.